those that I haven't met, my name is Stephanie Slater and I'm founder and chief exec at School Food Matters. And I'm really pleased to be chairing today for what's going to be a really interesting webinar on the sustainable school kitchen. So before we start, I'm going to hand over to Naomi, chief exec at Chefs in Schools, who's going to tell you a bit more about it.
Fabulous, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for logging on today. I really hope we're going to have, I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion. We've got some great speakers. The goal really for us today is to showcase some best practice that's going on out there, and hopefully to leave everybody with a few tips and tricks that they can take back to their school and their school kitchens. And I guess without further ado, we're going to get started. We'll be hearing from pupils, head teachers, school chefs, the whole selection of people. If you've got any questions, you should have a couple of minutes after each presentation to ask them. Otherwise, there will be a Q&A with the panel at the end. So please make liberal use of the chat box. And yeah, back over to you, Stephanie.
Yeah, that's great. So what I'm going to suggest is that we've got over 100 people registered for this webinar, so we might have a very busy day. So I suggest, just for your viewing pleasure, if you go to speaker view, you'll be able to make more sense of what's going on, I think. The other thing to say is, if you do want to ask a question of any of our speakers, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat and I will feed in any questions once each of our speakers has finished. So we're actually starting with a pre-record. So the powers of technology, we're hoping this is going to work beautifully. So we're going to be hearing from Bia. Is it B or Bia? Naomi, do you know?
I think it's B.
Lovely. So B is a representative from Teach the Future campaign. And we're going to hear about their views on accessing sustainable food and drink options in schools. That's why we're all here. So Gabby, I'm hoping this is going to magically happen.
Yes. Can you see that?
We can.
Great.
Hi, I'm Bea, I'm 16 and I'm based in Southeast London, and I'm talking to you today as a climate activist myself, but also on behalf of an organisation called Teach the Future. I am part of my school climate council, and so we have lots of different projects that we get up to. We kind of help to raise awareness in the school community about being responsible consumers, such as our Brand New You campaign, which kind of exposes kind of top brands such as Nike and Adidas and all these different companies who are very, very fashionable and very, very popular, but also quite a dark side with kind of the sweatshop schemes and unsustainable sources. We are currently trying to change our school canteen menus just to make it more transparent, so we see where our food is coming from, and also more responsible, so maybe slightly less meat and more local produce. I have suffered with eco-anxiety, which at one point spiraled into an eating disorder due to my sense of guilt that my diet was contributing to the current global social, economic and climate crisis. The ways that it could have been avoided is just more transparency about where the produce comes from. And also there has been a big push recently about the traffic light system on different foods. So it's like the sugar, the fat and salt and all that jazz. There would also be a carbon footprint as a fifth one. I think there's 5 as a fifth one. So it would be red, amber or green, depending on the carbon footprint. So I think that would be really good just to make people able to be more responsible consumers. So in terms of being more responsible and kind of preventing other students to feel kind of guilty and responsible for the change that is happening now, my top tips for individuals is kind of consider alternatives. And so say you're in the mood for a Kit Kat, maybe try an Ella bar or just make your own, because they are just more responsible because they have biodegradable packaging, recyclable packaging. And then top tips to schools, support your students and listen to your students and be proactive. Don't just say, oh yes, this is amazing, we love that you're speaking up for your generation. They're not actually acting on it. So I think communicating with so for example with food, communicating with your canteen suppliers to see how they can reduce their carbon footprint and be more responsible producers and consumers. I mean, obviously there's a limit with school budgets because they don't have a never-ending pocket. Schools are amazing places, but they have lots of things that they need to invest in. And unfortunately, the school canteen isn't always one of them. So one thing that I think is amazing to kind of get people started to kind of reduce their carbon footprint through their diet is the meat-free Mondays that I'm aware have been happening a lot recently.
Jock, on the spot, for all 2,160 hours of winter to avoid turning on the heating! Or just skip meat for a day. Meat-free Monday.
It definitely does play on my mind when I see people kind of throwing things away without really looking what bin they're going into, and even cleaners kind of mixing the recycling and the non-recyclables and things like that. It's something simple that can be done, but I think people they don't it's not that they don't care, it's just it's not really on their mind. So I think we kind of need to raise awareness, and then that's on the individual level, but also with the suppliers. I think there needs to be more recyclable, biodegradable packaging, a lot less plastic, because we all know how bad that is. Yeah, I think it's just because it's quite hard on an individual to go up to the canteen and say, oh, I can't buy that because that's wrapped in plastic, I can't buy that because it's not recyclable. I think if the producers really created this just an easier alternatives, then I think it would just make life a lot simpler. Action really does need to be taken, because the point of a school is to support a student's obviously their academic side of their life, but also their well-being. And I think we will see a rise in climate anxiety. So I think to kind of prevent others from suffering in ways that I have or in different ways, I think we really need to make a change now. And I hope that schools, they don't have to work as individual schools. I really hope that schools can act as a network and a support group and kind of work together to push canteen suppliers for a better future.
Well, I think that might be all from B. I believe B is going to be joining us for the Q&A. Is that right? That's fantastic, because I certainly have a few questions to ask her. I thought that was a wonderful presentation. I hope she's taken it far and wide. Now, closer to home, we have our next speaker. And it's going to be two chefs, I believe, from Woodmansterne. And that is Jacob and Sam. Is that right? We've got Jacob here, who's the head chef educator at Woodmansterne.
Hello.
Excellent. There you go, Jacob. Sorry, I couldn't quite see you on my screen.
That's all right. I think it's just me today.
Lovely.
Sam is about though, so he might drop his head in at some point. Okay. Hello, I'm just sharing my screen. Can you see that?
We can see that. So if you go to slide view, that would be perfect.
How's that?
It's fantastic. Off you.
Okay, so hello, my name is Jake, and I am the head chef at Wilmington School alongside Sam Richards, who, yeah, is an old friend. We've been working together for years. We've been here for coming up to 2 years now. This is coming into our closing of our second academic year. And we feed about 800 to 900 kids a day, Monday to Friday. And we came in through the charity Chefs in Schools. And yeah, so talking about sustainability as a study, when Naomi first asked me to, I was kind of both honoured and also a little apprehensive, because I didn't think initially of us as a kind of quote unquote sustainable school. But then when I kind of thought about that, I think that it's something that Sam and I do so inherently and have done for years, that it kind of got me thinking about, I suppose, the importance of the different elements of sustainability. And I think the three that I want to cover today are staff, which I personally think is the most important, and then ingredients as well, so food waste, and then finally disposables, so your kind of typical plastic waste. So I'll move on to staff. And I think it's just the most important thing in terms of having a sustainable workplace, a sustainable school kitchen. When we first came in, there was a contract caterer here, and the first thing that we kind of identified being in the school is that we needed to raise the wages. So that's what we did. We took them from minimum wage to London living wage, and recently they've gone on to a kind of spine point. You know, they were salaried as a full contract in Lambeth and in the school. And secondly, we have this kitchen mission statement that we wrote that you can see on the left there. This is a really important thing for keeping people, I think, keeping the kitchen kind of motivated and understanding that we're working towards the project, which leads on to making the kitchen a vital part of the school's cultural fabric, which I think is something that in lots of schools that I've heard anecdotally, I mean, I haven't got lots of experience in other schools, but it's something that often the kitchen is a separate entity to the school. And I think it's something that is really important. And so for instance, everyone's referred to as chef by the school. We meet with school council, and it's about weaving part of the school and education into one. The dining room is very much our domain. So we choose kind of the rules as soon as the kids come out of the hallway and into the dining room. We also then manage the lunchtime supervisors, offering staff training where needed and listening to their kind of needs and demands. And I think we realized that with the 12 that we manage, and you can see them down in the corner there. We've got a couple that we've hired since. That everyone is different, and some need more support, some need to just be told what to do. That's how they like to work. Some people want to be trained in ingredients and cooking. Others want kind of health and safety and these kind of things. And as a result, we've had 100% retention of staff since we've been here. And I think that's the thing that actually, when thinking about giving this presentation, is most important in a sustainable sense to Sam and I, is that everyone has stayed. And we've managed to adapt to their needs and theirs to ours. Secondly, ingredients. So reuse and recycle. So that's something that we've got our food waste bill really, really, really low by some examples there. So leftover rice, we turn into egg fried rice or an arancini the next day for break. Bread, we make breadcrumbs, which we'll use for fish and chicken, things like that. Potatoes, Spanish omelets for break. We make all of our stocks with all of the leftover veg. We even dry orange peel, which we add to sauces. And it's about championing that recycling in innovative ways. Because when we first came, I think a lot of the children were like, that's yesterday's stuff, you're using old things. But we've engaged them and we've told and we've explained to them that that's something that is really important in both the kitchen and just kind of moving forward. We also have a fermentation lab. Sorry, I've sort of, how much time do I have? Another 5 minutes? And we've built a fermentation lab, which we make all sorts of really fun stuff. So you can see it in the middle there. That's our kind of little chamber. We make koji in there. We're making a soy sauce at the moment. We lacto ferment of vegetables as well. So that's part of the reason we cycle, which is really simple. It's kind of measuring out how much your weight of, say, cabbage, and then 2% salt, punching that down, leaving it for a few days, and then you've got sauerkraut or kimchi. Same with preserving lemons. We once got a big batch of lemons that, you know, I ordered way too much, and so we've turned them into preserved lemons, and we've been using those for our kind of curries and things for the last term. Quick pickling as well, really simple method of 3-2-1, so 3 parts water, 2 parts vinegar, 1 part salt, throwing that over things like onions and making them last. And we also collaborate with the science department, so it's a nice way to reach back into the school. So we literally this afternoon had year 8 class who are learning about fermentation. They come down, they get to see the lab, they get to try the food, they made their own little sauerkraut, they take it back up to science, and they'll kind of be developing that with their teacher. Okay, moving on. And then thirdly, disposables. This is a kind of really obvious one, and this is kind of, I think, what we all think about when we think about sustainability. There's a really fantastic guide that I urge everyone, I implore everyone to go and look at. It's called No Mise en Plastic. It is by a chef in the industry and a friend of mine called Jack. And he was furloughed last year, and he spent his time making this kind of wonderful guide of how kitchens can reduce their plastic waste. We've done that immediately by masking tape instead of plastic food labels. We use lids instead of cling film, and gloves. The use of gloves is just kind of exorbitant and unnecessary. So we wash our hands more. It's actually cleaner doing that. And trying to minimize deliveries, things like that. We've also done the typical separating our bins. So we have recycling, we have a food waste and general waste. We use cutlery and crockery. We don't really use disposables, and we're a water only school, which is great. So we don't have lots of cans and plastic bottles and things like that going out. I suppose lastly, I wanted to say about the implementation, and I thought thinking about these things, it kind of, as building blocks, you can see there's disposables, ingredients and staff. On the left-hand side, it's easiest to implement is the disposables because it's really simple. It can be achieved by simply adding, applying the free guideline, No Mise en Plastic, to your school. It can be done in a week. You don't have to, you can stop ordering cling film pretty much instantly if you buy some lids. Ingredients, time frame 1 to 6 months. I mean, I'm just kind of guessing here, but I think that obviously takes more time because the chefs, you need to want to learn about pickling and preserving, but really rewarding when twinned with the curriculum, and teaches awareness to students about food waste. And staff, time frame, it's ongoing. You can't really put a time on it, but I genuinely think that happy staff means you've got happy food and happy kids. The final little thing was just a footnote on savings, because I think it's kind of important to touch on. I've had a bit of a wild stab here, I'd have to say, but I reckon cling film, £25 monthly cost, initial outlay for lids, and bits £125 after 6 months, that's paid for itself. Plastic labels similarly, gloves per month. And they've gone crazy, they've like doubled in price since the last year as well, so washing hands. Ingredients, there's a study that shows that every £1 a restaurant invests to cut down food waste, they save £7 in operating costs over 3 years. And staff, I found out yesterday that apparently it costs £5,000 to £10,000 to replace a full-time member of staff. So that one is a very obvious saving. So yeah, I think that's probably, may have run over a bit there, maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, thanks.
You're absolutely spot on, Jake. Thank you. That was
great. I meant to set a timer, but I didn't.
No, we're fine. I've got my clock here.
Okay.
So it now leaves us some time for questions and comments, so that's really useful. So if you might, I'll stop sharing screen so that we can see you again.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, you've done it already for me. Thank you. So in the let me give you some nice comments first. So we've got a very impressive Jacob. Love the pickling and preserving. Great food education for children, challenging their taste preferences. So that was a comment, and I know it's from the head teacher. So Jason O'Rourke. So that's really good to see. Can I just ask you, is this a primary or secondary school?
It's an all-through school, so I probably should have said that in introduction. So it's reception. It is everything from reception through to year 10 and 11 because no, up to year 10. Sorry, because we're growing. growing school.
Amazing. And I, like Suzanne Spence, who's popped it in the chat, we're really excited to hear that you managed to become a water-only school. I only know one more in London, actually, that's managed that. Are you also managing, if you're water-only, you're also managing only to sell water out of the tap? Have you got rid of plastic water bottles as well?
Yeah, we don't sell any water, so we don't sell drinks, which, speaking to some other people at other schools, is kind of quite a crazy notion, because I think like lots of food businesses, that's where they make their biggest margins.
Yeah.
So we actually, when we came, it was already a water school. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about how it happened, the initial reaction, but I certainly know that, so the kids bring in their own water bottle, reusable kind of sports bottle or whatever, and they fill up from the tap. We don't have any vending machines, anything like that, which is great, because I think ultimately the argument is it's not necessary really to have anything. All you need is water.
And we
but
don't.
I understand. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was to say, we don't want children spending their free school meal money on bottled water either. That's not the way to go. So I salute you on that one. I've got one here from Yenny, who said, how did your school, how did your school convince the leadership team to support ideas like the Fermentation Lab and making food a focus?
We have a really progressive head teacher here, so I think she's backed us from the very beginning. And I think, again, from speaking to other people at schools, I think that's the real key to this, because I've also spoken to some people who have had some head teachers who are a bit more apprehensive about these things. I think our head teacher really supports what we're doing, and I think the way she's explained it before, she sort of lets it run like a department. And as long as we deliver food and we feed 800 kids every day, she kind of she gives us free rein to explore these ideas.
Well, I mean, yes, I think everybody on this call knows that it's the head teacher that often leads the change. And we've got another one here. I think it might be from a school business manager, not sure. So are there any training courses you would recommend for our kitchen staff? We're looking to bring our catering in-house and make our kitchen sustainable. So
email me.
Oh, we've lost you. Are you still there, Jake?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, got you now.
Hi.
So the training courses, the question was.
Training courses, no, I mean, we have, it's a good question. I could definitely have a think and write down some bits. I mean, we have everyone who is level 2 food hygiene. We sort of run from there. We have little training days on inset days and things like that, where they'll come in. We try and keep the sort of deep clean to a minimum, and then we'll spend the rest of the half of the day learning about allergens or learning about a dish that we're cooking or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think there's lots more in the chat, but I think we possibly need to move on. But thank you, Jake. You're doing amazing work there. It's really inspiring. So keep going. And I'm hoping that maybe someone from Chefs in Schools can forward some of the other questions and comments over to you, because we need to move on. But thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
The next presentation we have is from Nick Corlett. Is Nick here?
He is, yes.
Excellent. Welcome, Nick. So Nick's from the London Early Years Foundation, and you're the sustainability lead, I believe. So we're going to be talking about early years. So off you go.
Thank you very much. So hopefully this works. So thank you, Stephanie. I am Nick. I am one of the senior nursery managers for the London Early Years Foundation. I'm also the sustainability lead for the entire organisation. So when we talk about early years, we mean from 3 months until 5 years. So today I've just been asked to speak a little bit about how we have reduced our food waste, the Greenleaf Initiative, and basically what we do within nurseries and for early years. Because often early years are a bit overlooked with the recycling and sustainability movement. I'm hoping people's minds today will be changed about what our children can actually do. So first of all, I'll run through some of these because people can read. But the London Early Years Foundation is the biggest social enterprise in the UK. We currently reach 4,500 children, and the majority of ours are in high economic disadvantaged areas. We actively engage with parents in the communities, and we employ 750 staff at the moment and 60 apprentices. So we've just gone up to 42 nurseries. So as you can imagine, that's quite a big impact we can have. and to start to get all of those good eating habits and good sustainability habits within our nurseries. So basically the overview for Greenleaf is we wanted to become a greener and more sustainable organization. So this is through practices, green initiatives, education for all, and offsetting impact of our central office. So we started this journey about 4 years ago. We realized that children have such a big influence in their parents, into the wider community. We wanted to start from scratch. So our babies up to our 5-year-olds are involved in Greenleaf. We've written books on it. We've just written a level 4 qualification as well, which is the first in the world as far as we're aware, around sustainability, purely focusing on early years and what our children can do. So I didn't actually see what time I start, so I don't actually know how long I'll go. So I'll trust Stephanie for that. So starting with our youngest children, we make sure that they have healthy attitudes towards eating. So when they do sit down to eat, they know they are respectful, they know they're not wasteful, they do as much as they physically can to be a part of the environment and make sure that we're not being wasteful just for food purely. So we make sure that eating is an enjoyable and sociable occasion. If most of us here will work with children, you know they can be very chatty. Try multiplying that by 24 3-year-olds who have questions on why is it a carrot and not a zucchini today, and why is that carrot orange, and my dog's name is Rebel, but my mum's name is Stephanie. So imagine that times 24, but also imagine the power you can have from those amazing questions of they have so many, they're just so intrigued about the world and we can influence it so much. So even during eating times, we make sure that the environment's calm, there's music playing, the table and food is presented nicely. So it's like a restaurant. I wouldn't want to be served slop. So we make sure all the meals our children are served, they look nice, they're presentable, they're more likely to eat them as well. Like I said, it's a sociable atmosphere, so everyone sits together and our teachers sit down and role model as well. They talk about what's in the meals. We don't hide food. We don't puree vegetables to go in. We want children to have a healthy attitude towards food. This has resulted in the majority of our nurseries being completely waste-free when it comes to food. When you see how we do it, it's quite impressive as well, especially our 3-year-olds. One of the things is every single day in every single one of our 42 nurseries, we do a roll call and an allergy and food preference list. So every single day, we know how many children exactly we are cooking for. Some of our nurseries have 20+ allergen meals a day, and it could only have 54 children in there. But this is basically to make sure that we're not wasting food. We're cooking the right amount of food for how many children are there that day, and also portion control. So each of these plates, the red plate for comparison is an adult size plate. It's basically the size of your hand, which is a normal adult size portion. The other size are the children's bowls. So the children know how to self-serve and regulate their own eating. So we're not being wasteful once again, but they will serve themselves on each of these bowls. They use real plates, they use real cutlery. Once they're 2-year-old plus, they use knife and forks. Everything is metal, everything is real. We wash them, there's no plastic within our nurseries. So being early years, a lot of people say, well, how much can they actually be involved? You'd actually be surprised. So the bigger the nursery, the more access we have to garden space. And a lot of our nurseries do grow their own food and produce for their kitchen. There's a lot of propagation within all the nurseries. So anything that is used or can be regrown is regrown, and then it's used down the track. Each month and each week when the menus come out, we have children's choices. So the children actually have healthy eating habits and they go through recipe booklets, they talk to the chefs, and they actually pick their meals and different things that they want included in their menu for that week. Provocations. So when things do start to expire, they aren't edible anymore, they're not wasted, they're used in play. On the left, you can see that all of this food is still in date. It was donated to us from a Sainsbury's up the road. The whole thing is edible. Every single aspect of that can be edible. It was in one of our babies' rooms. So with babies, the key to it is you steer into the curb, expect them to put it in their mouth and eat it. So we have a whole provocation where they can eat and explore. The cooking activities with our chef happen across the week. Once again, we're talking to them, we're exploring the EYFS, we're teaching them math skills, social skills, hygiene skills. At the end product, they feel proud and they're respectful of the process of it, and they're more likely to eat it as well. Once we've done with all of that, if we can't grow it, we can't reuse it, we then put it in all of our wormeries and composters. So the children do basically all of this. We teach them the right ways. In my nursery, we have something like 100 different indoor plants. It's a bit of a jungle, and our children respect and they look after all of those single plants themselves. They know when they have to water them, how they have to water them. It's the same with this. They know what can go in the worm buckets, what can't go in the worm buckets. After each meal, they go and put them in the wormeries. They wait until it breaks down. The worm castings get put on their plants. The plants grow more vegetables. The vegetables go in their food. The food waste goes back into play. The play, there's them, and it just continues on like that. Our children will also go home and then start talking to their parents. So that's what we're trying to influence, is a wider picture and a wider community. 3-year-olds' influences on parents are very, very strong, as most of you who have children will know. So we're hoping that when we do start speaking to parents more, they will be able to have more of an influence as well.
2 more minutes there, Nick. Thank you.
Oh my goodness me. So this is just a basic overview of one of our menus. There's water and milk is the only drinks that we provide during the week. There's no sugar in any of our meals. They're all naturally sweetened with fruit. Yeah. We've also, sorry, my office door just got open, so a preschool walked in. We've also just realized that we have chefs at all of our nurseries, but we've recently appointed senior chefs that will oversee all of the menus and mentor the other chefs about food waste and how they can have bigger influences and implement different strategies as well in their kitchen. So they've also been filming recipes for our parents, which then can be shared, and we can help educate our parents even more and bridge the gap between nursery. We've also just started altering the menus to minimize food waste even more, and we'll be having completely no waste ordering and recipes. So some meals will provide different nutrition, but it will use every single aspect of everything that is brought into the nursery. And all of our kitchens are rated a 5 from environmental health as well. So our current green portfolio, reducing, we have to say with our toys and things like that, we're almost plastic free. There are some places for plastic within a nursery. Bodily fluids is one of them. I hate to say it, but sometimes we do have to use gloves, but we do reduce them. If we don't have to use gloves, we don't. And like someone said before, washing your hands is actually better. So we do that for a lot of things, but there's some things you don't want to touch without a pair of gloves, I'm trying to make. There's no shoe covers. We have all cloth aprons in all our nurseries, so there's no plastic within that. There's no glitter within any of our nurseries. It's all bio glitter, which breaks down naturally, and environmentally friendly glitter, which we make, which is with dried flowers. Glass milk bottles, there's no plastic bottles. All of our sustainable partners and suppliers, we have to do background checks, and we have an ethical partnership policy to make sure that they are following the same guidelines as we are. There's always ongoing recycling projects within nurseries, and we're trying at nurseries different things as well. That's only relevant for Ellie's people. Any questions or queries, please do not hesitate to email.
Nick, that was fantastic, and you've arrived bang on time. I was a bit worried that Nicole, I'd be in trouble with Nicole if I was late. You know what those chefs are like. But that was really, really interesting. Thank you. And it was so nice to hear some little voices outside the door too. Makes it.
There's 34 of them outside my door at the moment, so
so,
it wouldn't be so little if the door was open.
Nick, are you staying with us for the Q&A at the end?
I'm hoping so, yes.
Okay, well, great. We might be able to have more of a conversation with you then. Sorry it's been so rushed. So,
not a problem.
Now we are moving over to our food interlude, which I'm quite excited about. So, Nicole, are you there? Oh, yes, I can see you. You're ready.
Hi. Yes, we're ready.
Excellent.
We're actually at Woodmanston as well, which coincidentally happened just by chance. So it's quite sweet actually, because I know Jake was talking. Well, first of all, let me introduce. So I'm Nicole, and I have Narissa Buckley with me. Narissa's been working with chefs in schools from the beginning, really, and has been, you know, a lot of the hard work that we do in schools is thanks to Narissa. And yeah, our first shift together, I think, was in this kitchen, and we didn't have any fish, and we arrived at 10 a.m. And funnily enough, I was interviewing chefs at the same time. And as Jacob was talking about sustainability of staff, he went into the office, and I said, I'll be 5 minutes and I'll come into the office. And he noticed that we were really stressed, and he came out and he was like, can I have an apron and can I help you? And that's, you know, and I just knew straight away that he was the right person for the job, because it's the whole idea of taking care of each other and taking care of the team. I think is really important. So I just wanted to say that sweet story for the reason why he has his job. But anyway, the recipe, so I'm going to hurry up because I know it's 10 minutes. We are deciding to use cheeks. So we're doing a fish recipe. It's halibut cheeks, and we're going to cook it 2 ways, but also, you know, cheeks, the idea with this recipe was just to show that you could look at all the animal and see how you can use it, which at the end of the day is a cheaper way of cooking. So we've also used mackerel because that's quite sustainable as well. So I'm going to go through the dish. I'm going to go through the dish quickly, but in the meantime, Narissa, do you want to go on why we use fish in schools?
We use fish in schools. Fish is a really good lean source of protein for the children. And we have 50 different schools that we are using fresh fish in. So we're using sustainable fish in all of our schools. So we phone our fish supplier on a Monday or a Tuesday, and they tell us what is actually the strongest fish that is swimming at the moment and the most sustainable fish, and that's what comes into our schools. So within 2 days it's being caught, filleted and brought up to our schools, and then the kids, you know, it's from Devon, and then when we talk to the kids they're so excited because they actually can see real fish.
So I'm going to go through the recipe quickly. So this is just a little bit of flour. This is a whisked egg. And, you know, we were thinking, like when we were looking at the recipe, we actually realized it is really how the way we think. So, you know, with bits like this of your bread that you don't use at the end of the day, we make our own breadcrumbs. So this is a mix of bread and turmeric. The bread is actually the bread that's not used in the school, blitzed, dried in the oven and blitzed up. So Narissa has really nicely done some cod cheeks. We're doing a Martha Stewart. These are the cod cheeks.
Here's some we prepared earlier.
Here's some ready. And now we are going to slowly start plating it. But now, do you want to go over the salad quickly?
So we've made a salad with shaved fennel. And then I've been out to the garden to see what we had, and I found some rosemary flowers, and I found some beautiful oregano growing. So I put them in the salad as well. I just put some lettuce, some tomato and peppers. So I literally just went around the kitchen to see what we could find. Because that's pretty much how we think. That's how we think. No, because we don't like to waste anything. So that's how we actually cook. And then we've made this beautiful ketchup as well. So it's 50% ketchup and then 50% roasted beetroot.
And this is really good because we make sure that we get, like if we're using tomatoes or beetroots in this case, that we get really cheap ones because we get the beetroots that can't be sold because they're either bruised or not perfect. So therefore they'll be cheaper. So this is the first dish here. So we've obviously fried them. And now the plating is, so this is normally a really good dish for primary, and the next one's a really good dish for secondary. So cod cheeks there. A little bit of salad. And go with the beetroot. So this is, it's quite simple. The tripod's working really well. It's quite simple and the kids love it because, you know, and even sometimes by doing half and half. So for example, half mackerel and half trout, or half mackerel and half cheeks. One, you're providing the oily fish that you need for the week, and two, you're also just using, you know, experimenting with kids with their flavors as well. And the second dish is, it's for secondary schools and it's a snack idea, and it's basically just to take on a fish finger sandwich. So I'm going to put it in here, and then the recipe I think is on our website as well, but yeah, here we go. So I will, and that is the fish finger sandwich.
Extraordinary, and with 3 minutes to spare, which is very good because we've got a question here. it says from Shane King, what's the cost price of both of these things, please? So if a student was going into the canteen to have a fish finger sandwich, what would they pay for it?
So the fish finger well, primary school obviously, well, it's 220, and fish finger sandwich will normally be between 220, well, between 175 and 220 as well.
Great. So and that very nicely fits into free school meal entitlement. So that's all good news. So let me just see if there are any other questions. Just lots of cheers and fantastics. Oh, here we go from Sally Bowman. Do any schools use surplus food in their kitchen? So linking up with some of the surplus food charities.
Yes, one of my favourite things is linking up with the surplus.
Whoever will have us.
We've driven vans around London all throughout summer delivering surplus food to schools, but we use the Felix project a lot. We now collaborate with them in various schools. We use, we also, our suppliers also are really good with giving us their surplus food and donating it as well. So all this comes obviously for free, but it's one of the key things that, you know, if you do have someone in the kitchen who cares about this sort of stuff, I mean, it is just managing it, because it ends up being free, but most of the time, you know, you need to either select what's good and what's not good. You have to be innovative with the menu. You know, sometimes you'd have to pickle the things that arrive because you get a lot of them. And obviously, you know, you get 20 kilos of cucumbers that you can't use the next day, 20 kilos of courgettes. I feel Nerissa wants to.
Well, no, that's what you do. You get so many things delivered all at once, and you have to be using every ounce of your chef knowledge to actually be able to use it all, which is one of the reasons and one of the ways we save money, which is why we can put this amazing fish on our menus.
Well, I think, but one more, not from the chat, but actually from me. What do you do with a whole load of courgettes?
We had courgettes 15 ways in the summer. Everything had courgette cake, pickled courgettes, everything had courgette.
Pesto, green sauce.
I did a flapjack and I put apple, and I was in a school and they walked off and they were like, oh, she's put courgette in the flapjack as well. And I was like, it's apple, it's not courgette, because it was grated and looked the same, but you could literally put it in everything.
So it makes a beautiful salad as well.
I have been asked that question a lot by school gardeners who, when they do seed sowing with children, and they end up with 14 courgette plants, and we know what that means. So good to know, good to know. Courgette fritters, Naomi has popped into the chat. So thank you both yet again. 2 recipes on time. You are the dynamic duo. So thank you so much for that. Excellent.
Thank you.
So moving along, next we are going to the Soil Association, the Food for Life team. And Karen Longdon from the Soil Association is going to talk about how their accreditation program can help schools take steps to improve sustainability. So Karen, are you there?
I am here, yes. I will just try to share my screen. Hopefully it'll work. I'm hoping that you can see that now.
Not yet.
Oh, just 1 minute. It was saying that I'd shared.
So there we go. Karen is here. We've got you.
You've got me. That's brilliant.
Open, no less.
Yeah. Right. I will try get it from the beginning.
Lovely.
Okay. Thank you. Hi there. So as Stephanie says, I'm Karen and I work for the Food for Life team at the Soil Association, and it's really good to come and talk to you. I'm going to rely on Stephanie to sort of check the time, because the food that we eat and how it impacts on sustainability and health is something that I could talk about all day, and I do tend to go on a little bit, so I'll try and keep it short. I've started with a picture. If anybody doesn't know this is Kevin Bacon. He's one of my favourite actors, and we do have something in common. In fact, Kevin Bacon and yourselves have something in common too. And of course, that's food. And it's something that connects all human beings. And so it means it's something that every human has the power to change. And I think the potential of the power of changing food that's served in public settings and how that sort of impacts on climate change is absolutely huge. And it's something that I'll talk about. So I'm to talk about some of the impacts, some of the issues, a little bit about the work that we do at the Soil Association, but also some top tips from our experience of food in school kitchens. So our food systems contribute to and can mitigate against climate change. Food production, depending on the metrics you use, contributes from around 19 to 29% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, which is massive. Typically 26% would be used for this number. And our food systems at first can sound really complicated. And when we think about where the foods come from, we sometimes have to go back a long way, have to think globally rather than local. Because even if you buy something from your local store or your local supplier, it's got little bearing on where in the world that food originated from. And before it reaches your plate, it's probably could have travelled halfway around the world by air or sea. It's probably been processed numerous times, packaged, and that's all before it actually comes to your kitchen. And we've done some research in asking people about what they think about farming and where food comes from. And typically when you talk to people and ask what they imagine about a farm, they will really describe something that you see on the left. So it's sort of a typical small farm mixed maybe with some animals and some arable land. But actually, the majority of food served in public institutions comes from intensive farming. So very much like the picture on the right. Typically one crop using chemical inputs, pesticides and fertilizers, with low standards of animal welfare and routine use of antibiotics in animals. In fact, across the globe, approximately 60% of all antibiotics are used in animal agriculture. And this has come from because we've got a demand for cheap meat. Whereas maybe 70 years ago, if I talked to my dad about when he was a kid, meat featured very rarely on the menu because it was so expensive. But now we've got a real demand mostly to have meat as a staple of every meal. And this is what's intensified farming. Also, if we think about processing food, there's different levels of processing, and to some extent all food is processed, but the more processed the food is, the higher the carbon impact it has. And there's lots of inputs that go into processing food, including all of the stages of processing and the packaging. So it just loads on the impact to the environment. So we at the Soil Association, we've got 2 sustainable food certifications. Food for Life served here concentrates on the food on the plate, where it's come from and what farming systems it comes from, and looking at the seasonality and sort of provenance of food. Then Green Kitchen Standard looks at the inputs that have gone to make that food. So typically the energy, water and waste from the kitchen that goes into that food. And together there's sort of 2 simple frameworks that go together and enable sites to show how they're improving in sustainability. And at the moment, there's around 2.1 million meals a day meeting our standards in public settings such as schools and hospitals. And we get asked a lot. We know that everybody's influence over food is different. And, there's lots of different catering models and lots of different school kitchens operating in different ways. But I guess, my top tips, these are things I get asked about a lot, is when you're thinking about the food in the kitchen, who provides it, just expect what you ask for. If you don't ask for what you want, you won't get what you want. We work with a lot of schools and a lot of sites who were quite confused when they've contracted a caterer that the offer that they've got is not what they thought they were getting. So you really do need to sort of interrogate the contract when you're looking at contracting a new caterer. You do get what you pay for and what you ask for, and sometimes you don't even get what you ask for. So I think it's really important to make sure that you you ask for what you want and ensure that when that caterer comes in place, that's what you've got. Less but better meat. You know, this is cropping up time and time again. We're getting asked from schools about advice about using less but better meat. And I think our main advice would be absolutely think about reducing the amount of meat, because that is one of the most impactful foods on sustainability. But try not to substitute meat for other processed foods. If you're thinking about using less but better meat, think about using you know, veg pulses to make food, rather than just buying in highly processed food. And that comes on to using less processed food. The more processed food is, as I mentioned before, the higher the impact on sustainability. So really look at the amount of processed foods that you're using, and try to cook food from scratch. Usually tastes better, you can control what goes into it, and the environmental impact can be much less. And I think engaging the school community in your vision, and we've heard about this in a couple of the previous talks, really thinking about what you want and having a joint effort in bringing that together, including the school staff, especially the kitchen staff and pupils, but all trying to work together and getting that message across about what you're trying to achieve is really powerful. And then I think welcoming sort of change and innovation. Don't be scared of trying new things. The amount of schools that we work with that are stuck in the same old rut of serving the same old food, and they think that, you know, oh, our children won't like that, or, you know, parents won't accept it if we stop serving as much meat because they're paying, and really don't listen to all that. It's all just white noise. Just really think about what you want to do and find a way to do it. So don't be scared of changing things and really involving pupils. I think you'd be surprised at you know, how adaptable they are, and how children welcome change. So think about what you want for your site and actually make that happen. Yeah, so I think that's it. So, you know, food is an imperative factor in combating climate change, and everyone can impact that. So what you do and the choices you make will decide whether food increases climate change or mitigates against it. And yeah, that's it from me, hopefully.
Yes, another wonderful presentation, bang on time, so thank you. I think the take home from that for me is ask. There's so many schools that we've worked with, like you, they haven't asked for anything, and this goes across whole local authorities. So thank you for being bold and for inspiring us to ask for what we want for our children. We sorry, there was just a flashed up here. We got how can schools get involved in Food for Life programs? We're being asked.
Well, I can share the link in the chat. There's the Served Here Award and Green Kitchen Standard. There's also a wider Food for Life award that looks at food in the whole of the school community. And I can share the link to the website, or I know Stephanie's got my contact details, so I welcome any emails. We do work with a lot of sites, a lot of caterers, but a lot of single school sites as well. And we're always looking for sort of inspirational, you know, people that are doing something different and making that change.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Karen. And I'm sure somebody will drop the Food for Life website in the chat and your details. Otherwise, we can get it either through me or through Naomi. So thank you.
No worries.
We're going to move on now to the Food Foundation. So Rebecca, are you with us?
Yes.
Fantastic. Welcome, Rebecca. So Rebecca's from the Food Foundation Peas Please campaign, and we're going to get an update. So over to you, Rebecca.
Right, let me just share my screen. I think that should be working. Let me try and go full screen. Oh, come on. There we go. Great. Can I just say, so fascinating hearing about all the stories. I actually completely forgot I was next. I've been enjoying listening to everybody's case study so much. But yeah, so my name's Rebecca. I work for the Food Foundation. So we're a charity, and our vision is a sustainable food system that delivers health and well-being for all. So I'm a nutritionist by background, but at the Food Foundation, my baby is Peas Please, and we have a simple mission really. So we're all about trying to drive up the UK's consumption of vegetables, and we have a partnership model. So Food Foundation is the lead partner, but we also work with civil society organisations across the 4 nations, so that we're really getting a spread. And in terms of what it is we do, so we're all about increasing vegetable consumption. We know that vegetable consumption is really low. It's particularly low amongst children and low-income families. So as a general rule of thumb, the richer you are, the more likely you are to eat more veg. So even though we take very much a kind of population level approach, schools, children and low-income families are sort of important target groups for us. And in terms of how we are trying to drive up vegetable consumption, so this little infographic kind of gives it a bit of a sense of how all our different work streams fit together. But we have Veg Cities, which is run by our partner Sustainable Food Places, and that's all about working at a community level to do stuff like get more people into community growing gardens, reduce food waste and boost veg consumption. Then we have sort of Peas Please, and this is very much about working with businesses and organisations from across the food system. So everybody from supermarkets to, of course, caterers to different government departments. And based on the type of business they are, we get them to make a veg pledge to grow, serve or sell more veg. And sort of finally, our sister program is Veg Power. So you might have seen the Eat Them to Defeat Them advertising campaign, which is obviously very targeted at children, and they run a fantastic schools campaign as well to go alongside the advert. And that's really about trying to get children engaged with vegetables and thinking of them as fun rather than boring and disgusting and healthy, which sadly I think is quite a sort of common cultural norm in our society. So in terms of the pledges that we have, so caterers, particularly school caterers, have been a really important sort of sector for us. So we have 24 caterers who have made veg pledges, of which 4 are university caterers. So we have University of West London, etc., signed up. We also have 8 that cover school catering, and that ranges from sort of contract caterers through to county catering services. And typically what our caterers pledge to do is to serve at least 2 portions of veg within the school meal. And we also try and get lots of them to set targets around increasing the percentage of veg that they're procuring, which is sort of used as a proxy for serving more veg. So in terms of how making a Peas Please pledge can help with environmental impact, basically we know that veg are a bit of a win-win when it comes to both health and the environment. So as a general rule of thumb, if we all ate a bit more veg and reduced our meat, there'd be both health and environmental impacts. So this is one of my favourite examples of what a pledge has done. They're not a school caterer, but I think it paints a nice picture. So they run all the canteens in PwC's offices, which is a financial services firm. So they set a target. They were going to increase their spend on veg by 5%. And the way they did that was a complete revamp of their menus. So they focused on having more sort of rotating dishes that were sort of veg centric. They tried to do more around seasonal veg. They basically offered a variety of choice and published sort of recipe cards to get employees really engaged. And what they found was that by doing all those things, they reduced their carbon footprint by around 1/5 and their water footprint by roughly 1/4, just through really focusing more on veg. And actually our school caterers do such an amazing job and some really interesting stuff on site. So I put just a few examples here, but some examples are Caterlink, for example, did a push around taster sessions and offering taster pots to kids to, try and get them more comfortable with exploring different tastes and types of veg. They've also supported and funded school gardens. ISS have sort of done rotating produce of the month campaigns, including sort of seasonal veg fact posters. So seasonal veg again can be better for the environment, and obviously veg are good for health. So kind of double duty action there. And actually, this is one of my favourite examples, but they what they started doing is when kids came into the canteen to queue up to get their food, they offered veg snacking stations, and they said that that helped both in terms of increasing how much veg kids were eating, but it also meant that the queue was a lot calmer. Hunger affects us all. Some other examples there, sort of speaking to courgette story we heard about just a few minutes ago, examples of getting veg, particularly sort of surplus veg that might either go into waste, into sort of other dishes, kind of a health by stealth approach. We've also increasingly seen caterers trying to do stuff around reducing food waste. So obviously we know that vegetables are often a type of food that is likely to be wasted or more likely to not be eaten by kids. For example, HC3S, Hampshire County Council Catering, have running some pilots to see how they can reduce that. And one of the things they did that worked really well was by getting all their canteens really supporting the Veg Power Eat Them to Defeat Them campaign, which they found out had actually significantly reduced food waste. And there's a wonderful picture of that canteen team on the top of that slide. I think they were defeating an evil pea. Just to finish off, so on our Peas Please website, we do have a whole host of resources. So it's food service and restaurant toolkit because it's slightly wider than just educational caterers, but I think it's relevant for all. And this is just full of different resources and guides that Food Foundation has written or other partners in the area have written. And some of the really nice tips here are things like, let kids have a bit of an option so that they don't feel like it's a sort of passive one-way serving of food. Make it completely standard to offer veg. It shouldn't be a big deal. Can you make simple swaps? So sweet potato, it counts as a portion of veg, whereas potatoes don't. Can you not hide veg, but can you ramp up the veg content of sort of popular dishes like pastas or pizza toppings? And can you promote fruit and veg? So maybe a bit less relevant for schools than contract caterers, but can you include veg in meal deals or as sort of snacks? And I think that is it. But yeah, just to say, we're always happy to have new catering companies make a veg pledge. And in fact, a lot of our pledges are also associated with Soil Association's Food for Life scheme. So yeah, please feel free to get in touch if you'd be interested in making a pledge for more veg.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was fantastic. Great to see those caterers really embracing this. We've got time for one question from the chat, and it's from Carly saying, have any of the caterers pledged to source more local food?
Yeah, so we don't particularly push it as a sort of pledge, but we welcome all pledges that cover things like more sustainable sourcing, more seasonal veg, more local veg, and we are seeing it increasingly. I think a lot of caterers seem to be much more keen to kind of explore those kind of options.
Great. Well, look, thank you. That's really exciting. I keep those pledges coming in. So next we are going to a charity called Grow, and we're going to hear from George Lamb, who's creating an on-site farm to fork experience for pupils. So George, are you there?
Yes, how you doing?
There he is.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. So I'm actually going to start by playing a short film, if that's all right.
Excellent.
Oh no, I just said share screen. And it's saying desktop 1. What's that doing? What's that all about? That's annoying. I don't understand what that is. Basic. Oh, sorry, this is very boring.
That's okay.
I actually shared it earlier on. I don't know if there's a way for you guys to play it.
Gabby's got the video, Stephanie, if George doesn't.
Gabby, if you're there, maybe you can magically take... Oh, look at her. She's amazing.
You're an angel. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. She's a secret weapon. So we're just going to try and find some sound. It looks amazing.
It is amazing. It's amazing. I'll do a voiceover for it. Gabby, we can't hear that. I don't know if you.
We might.
No worries. If it's not working, I can. You know, I've got plenty of chat. Don't worry. So it's all good. Oh, Gabby's leaving. She had enough.
Apologies, I was on mute. I will start again. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you. So.
Okay.
The Grow Farm is a 6-acre site just at the end of the Northern Line, and it's the very beginning of the Green Belt. Our farm's right next to our partner school, the Totteridge Academy. It was just a completely empty 6-acre field that hadn't really been used for anything for years. Right at the beginning, it was just a really big community effort to do all the kind of back-breaking work to prepare the ground.
I started to get really frustrated with turning on the news and seeing that we had a massive mental health crisis amongst young people, that child obesity is going through the roof, knife crimes out of control. The planet's on fire whilst the 1% are literally creaming all the money out of the system. And I just thought, you know what, we're better than this, and it doesn't have to be like this, and it could be different. So for the last 2 years, we've been developing Grow, which is a 360 learning program. We teach kids how to look after their mental and physical health, and how to be self-sustainable, and how to grow their own food and look after animals.
The cool thing that we're doing at Grow, making it a part of the everyday life of the school, teaching them about how to do it properly as like a viable career and a skill that you need to know as every day for them as an English lesson, or, you know, getting their lunches to like pop down to the farm.
I work in partnership with Chefs in Schools, which is a charity that's trying to improve school food.
So I eat this.
High quality, high welfare, local.
This is edible.
It's really important that the food that we're cooking is not just good for the students and good for us, but also good for the planet.
Do you know the Brussels sprouts are from the farm?
We have oversight and understand where our food is coming from.
Everybody, I still mine.
It literally is picked 8, 9 a.m. in the morning, goes into the kids' lunches.
Being able to work with a farm like that, I mean, you know, that's like some of the best restaurants in the country. You know, the chefs get to go and pick their own veg and stuff like that. Well, I'm doing that here in the school.
It's actually really nice.
We were able to run a programme this year through feedback, where we could offer 2 paid placements for local under 25-year-olds.
Since being a part of Grow, it's helped me to look differently at the world and my surroundings, especially living in such a fast-paced city like London. It can be hard to slow down the pace and just reconnect with nature and the mind.
And they've actually gone on to both become part-time employees with Grow after that placement finished. And for us, that's so important because they both are local, they want to go out and make change in their communities, and we're able to share those skills.
I never thought I'd like being in front of a class teaching, but it's been great.
Every week we harvest for the school. We've got a big farm, so it's a lot more produce. So we also started this year running a weekly market, and we do it right from the school site, and we get all our school families and other people from the local area coming in and buying. The rest of our produce we sell to local restaurants and businesses as well.
Our real mission is about trying to raise the environmental and emotional literacy of the next generation. And if you give them the tools, then they can go out there and they'll be able to make the right decisions.
The far site, we're going to have animals. That's a really important part of the ecosystem as well. We'll have our outdoor classroom and building one day, which means that we can just have people on the site all year round. And we just really want to make it a place that anybody feels at home in. People can just come and spend time here and feel good.
Wicked, Gabby, thank you. Can you hear me all right? Am I on Gabby's screen? I'm all right, I'm good, I'm here. Right, cool, thanks very much. So that's Grow, that's our farm that we set up. We've been going 2 years. The farm really got converted from being a field into being a farm since the beginning of lockdown. And we produced a ton of vegetables over the course of the last harvest that we distributed between the school canteen, the local food banks, and selling, you know, affordable organic produce to local families. So just to give you some kind of context, it's going to be quite, it's a whistle-stop tour because I've got about 5 minutes. So about 5 years ago, I was doing lots of community work. And I was becoming, if I'm honest, increasingly frustrated with you know, like seemingly a never-ending stream of half-dead bodies coming down the river that you could pull out and put a blanket on and give a cup of tea to, and you turn around and there's another 5,000. And so I started to really think about, like, what's going on here, and why have we got this, why have we got so many people getting broken down by the system? And so I decided to go upstream and try and figure out what was going wrong. And it became apparent to me that actually, if you're going to change things, then education really is the only way to do stuff. Because, short of the building being on fire, trying to get adults to move in the same direction at the same time is nigh on impossible. And at that time, the community work I was doing was mainly around kind of disenfranchised, disengaged groups of people, looking at it from a kind of socio-economic lens. And a friend of mine kind of threw in a bit of a curveball. He was written a book. It was his fourth book, and none of them before had been about the environment. Anyway, he said he was coming to London, and he wanted me to do a Q&A, and would I mind reading his book? Anyway, so his publisher sent it through, and I sat down on my sofa. And I did, for the first time in my life, and I haven't done it subsequently, I sat and I read a book in one sitting. And it was called How Soon Is Now? And it was about the ecological mega crisis that we're facing. And this is pre-Greta and pre-XR. And all of a sudden, all of this information, this tidal wave of doom basically just kind of swept over me. And I had this real kind of shocking reality where I realized that all of the work that I was doing outside of or rather all the work I was doing in the community, frankly, was arbitrary, because if we didn't have a planet, then there's nowhere even then just to have your disagreements. Like literally, we've got nothing if we're underwater or if it's 4,000 degrees. And so I decided that actually what I was going to do and what I was going to make my focus in education around was trying to raise the environmental literacy of a generation of young people. And so I came to the conclusion that I wanted to set up these kind of Jedi training camps, and we were going to teach young people how to do it. And I went and saw my only friend in education, who was a head teacher at a school that had been struggling for 20 years. And he was the 5th head teacher inside 3 years, I think, and they were down to less than 500 kids, where they would normally have 1,200. And so he was kind of looking for any competitive advantage. They were just building a £30 million super school at the end of the road, and he was really up against it. Anyway, I went there. I gave him the whole Jedi training camp for Eco Warriors pitch, and for whatever reason, thankfully he went for it. And he said, you know what, as it turns out, we've got a 6-acre field over the other side of the fence there, and you can have that and you can do what you want. Anyway, I then found myself in this field, realized very quickly I didn't know anything other than what I'd read in the book about environmental studies and how we were going to arrive at this end goal that I was after. And so I spent the next 6 months just going around talking to anybody who would talk to me in outdoor learning. And pretty much all of them said to me, George, if you really want your thing to land, don't just pigeonhole it in food growing. And actually what you've got to do is take a 360 holistic approach to the well-being of the child. And so over the course of the last 2 years, we've been developing this curriculum. And we have now 4 modules, which is ground, which is about getting outside and getting your hands dirty and learning how to grow your own food and be sustainable. Think, which is about philosophical thinking. So how do we, instead of just trying to push kids through this one-size-fits-all funnel, how are we thinking creatively, expansively, critically, sharing ideas, and then flow, which is about how do I get into flow state. So all of us have it inside of us, and actually recognizing that it's a thing, and it's a state that you can access through meditation, mindfulness, breath work, art, singing, dance, play, whatever it is, just finding that higher state. And showing the kids that that's how they can get into their highest power. And then
there's just one more minute, because we're going to go to the panel shortly for Q&A, but we can continue the conversation unless you'd like to give me one last comment.
Absolutely. And then the 4th pillar of that is Thrive, and Thrive's just about how do we pull all of the learnings we've got from ground and think and flow into our everyday lives. So we have a boxing academy, a basketball academy, a YouTube club, so on and so forth. Anyway, really what Grow's about, you don't need a 6-acre field, you don't need a whole farm, you just need a philosophy, you need a mindset, you need to get your head in the right space, you need to want to make change. And if you can do that, and you can go and push that into your school and get the right people to buy in, and you only need buy-in from 6 people at the beginning, you can definitely change the culture in a school, and that's what we're doing, and what I hope we've managed to start in the first 2 years.
That is a great statement to finish with. And I'm really grateful that you've left us with that very, can-do attitude. So we're going to move on to the panel now. And I'm hoping that our panelists are still about. and would like to answer some questions. So should we just start off with one? One of the abiding messages from all of our speakers is that it's really important to get young people involved. I'm thinking about Peas Please, about getting them to eat more veg. So can I ask our speakers, please, to give me their top tip when it comes to engaging young people? I'm going to start with Rebecca, because we've just been talking about getting children to eat veg, so you might have some top tips.
Yeah, I think maybe more of a general one, but I think one thing that's really important is just making it fun. I think there's sometimes a tendency, you know, when talking about health or the environment, it can come across as quite worthy or even quite complicated, which can be off-putting for people. So I think, you know, focusing on the fun, the, you know, how appealing veg can be, for example, can all be really helpful.
That's really great. And tell me, Karen, I'm sure Food for Life have got some canny ways to engage with young people and get them involved in this.
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of ways, and we sort of advocate having groups in schools that specifically talk about food, so maybe through the school council, but having pupils as the sort of central bit of that. But I think my top tip would be, don't just pay lip service. If you're going to do it properly and listen to them and actually act on, you know, what they say. I know some requests can be unreasonable. We've had pupils that, you know, maybe want food that they can't have on the menu every day, but try not to patronise them and take their ideas on board. And if they see that they're actually being listened to and those ideas are being actioned, then you get much more sort of involvement, and they'll take pride in it. And I think when it comes to sort of influencing other children, their peers are the sort of most important people. So you can really use them as champions within the school, whether it's around healthy eating or sustainability or anything really. So just yeah, don't patronise them and listen to them properly.
That's a good that. Oh, you said we did message we want to get through, don't we?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, definitely.
So I'm interested, is Jake still with us?
Yeah, hello.
Jake, do you want to add to that about getting young people involved? What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, create hype, engage them, introduce them to new flavours.
Great.
That's why, yeah. Sorry, I don't want to take too much time, but yeah, I think it's just about getting them like excited. It's not about forcing sustainability or healthy eating down their throat. It's about getting them excited about food, which I think.
And Nick, I guess you're going to echo that. Are you still with us, Nick?
I am, yes.
What's your thought? I mean, you've got some very little ones to get involved, but it doesn't look like you're having any problems.
I would completely echo it. Just talking to them, make it fun, make sure they're trying things. Also, as adults and teachers, as role models, talking to them about it as well. That's my biggest issue, is teachers saying, oh, I don't eat that though. So obviously children will see that, then they say, oh, so it's just putting out that positive message of trying new things. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. And George, I don't think you've had much trouble getting your students involved. Are there any top tips you want to share?
I mean, we've had literally hundreds of students out on the field, and if we've had more than 4 or 5 kids of the hundreds we've had refuse to taste something when they've been out there, then I'll be surprised. You know, I think it's a bit of a myth that kids, you know, won't try things or taste things, and actually, but I think you've got to get them at source. And you know, perhaps the best bit of advice I had in all of, you know, when I was setting Grow Up, somebody said to me, you have to get control of the canteen, you have to be involved in the canteen, and you have to join the dots between the actual growing of it and the canteen and your food tech. Because if you don't, you're going to be sending out mixed messages. So, you know, make sure you've got a very clear, you know, directive of what you're trying to push.
George, that's a really good point, because Yenny has just put in the chat, how can we join up school menus and food teaching? So that makes and we've seen great examples of hearing about where young people have grown stuff in the allotment of the school garden and taken it to the school canteen. So that's a lovely virtuous circle, education and good seasonal food on the menu. So I'm just going to see, did B join us? Naomi, was she able to join us?
I'm not sure if she has joined us.
Okay. I just didn't want to leave her out. She did such a great presentation, but maybe she hasn't joined.
If she has, I'm sure she'll let us know.
Okay. So I've just got looking in the chat here, and there was a question earlier. Well, there are a couple of things here. We were talking earlier about implementing strategies to boost sustainable food, to get sustainable practices into schools. Somebody asked earlier if there was any issue if you're working in an area that has huge issues around low income and food insecurity and other problems on their plates. Can I just ask if anybody has had to deal with this separately, or do we think that this is accessible to all? I'm going to ask, is Jake here?
Yeah, hello.
Great, there you are. You bobbed her out on my... So does it make a difference about your school setting or your school population, or can everybody get involved?
I think definitely everyone can get involved. I mean, speaking from the perspective of our school, our secondary school, for instance, is about, I think, around 60% eligible for free school meal. So it's a pretty poor area that we're cooking in. We're sort of taking steps to address that, in that we are in the half term. We are Key Stage 1, Lambeth funds free school meals for every student. We still have about 20% of those on packed lunches. Now, packed lunches, I'm sure everyone's pretty aware, and are pretty terrible. I think studies show that 1% of them meet the same nutritional guidelines that a school, hot school dinner kitchen such as ours is required to meet. So we have taken it to the Parents Forum last week, and we successfully convinced them that we are going to essentially ditch and we're going to ban packed lunches for Key Stage 1 because it's free. So it's a great way to get those kids. It takes a lot of the pressure off the parents having to think of and prepare those packed lunches. And it will hopefully get them at a young age used to these different flavors, used to these different things. Hopefully into Key Stage 2 and beyond, they'll continue with us eating. So we're kind of going to the root, going to the source.
That's a really simple, bold and effective action, and that's going to please not only head teachers who have to police packed lunches, but also caterers who, you know, you can drive meal numbers in that way, because it's a virtuous circle again, isn't it? Karen, do you believe that schools in any setting with any demographic, any pupil population can embrace sustainability?
I do, yeah, definitely. I don't think it comes down to it's about the school, and I think you need echoing what Jake was saying. I think you do need that strong leadership within the school to make the decisions. But at the very least, for those pupils that might be on free school meals, that school meal should be the very best it can be, and it shouldn't just be around cost. In fact, we've worked with lots of models where it's shown that actually improving the provenance of the food, or where the food comes from, and the sustainability has actually saved the money in the long run when they really look at it. So I don't think it is about the area. I think all children should be sort of taught about these issues within, and school's the ideal place to do it.
I agree, yeah. And I'm interested in speaking to Rebecca about this, because fruit and veg can be expensive, particularly fruit. We found this during our COVID response programme. So I'm kind of interested in seeing if you've come across barriers amongst low-income families or schools in high areas of deprivation. Has it been harder to get fruit and veg in there, or have you not seen this as a problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a complicated one. I mean, if you spoke to a lot of fruit and vegetable growers, they'd say, well, you know, cost is, we don't need cheaper veg. But we do know that particularly if you know, affordability is a major issue for a lot of families. And if you look sort of calorie by calorie, fruit and veg and healthier foods are often a lot more expensive than sort of more processed foods. And affordability is definitely an issue, I think, particularly for low-income families. You know, after you've paid rent, bills, etc., the food budget is pretty easy one to be squeezed, and we know it costs more to afford a healthier diet. So it definitely is an issue. But yeah, as it can be quite nuanced. Even stuff like, you know, do you want to risk buying a new fruit or veg that your kid hasn't tried before? If they don't like it, and then you're going to have to chuck it. So there's sorts of lots of issues at play, I think, but definitely I would like to see fruit and veg become more affordable.
Thank you, Rebecca. I've got a question about, it's a common one, about teenagers. How do we convert teenagers? Well, we know that climate change is of real interest. So George, talk to me about your teenagers and how you've managed to engage them in this.
Yeah, I mean, so we're a secondary school. You know, full transparency. At the beginning, there was definitely some pushback, and they weren't wild about it. And we probably changed too much of the menu in one hit. And you know, I think we were either the first or the second secondary school to go. So we in Chefs in Schools, so we didn't have loads of kind of research to work from, unfortunately. But you know what, like, you know, we listened to them. I think Karen said earlier, you know, you've got to listen to them and you've got to react. And so we kind of, you know, we gave some ground back, and we put a few staples back on the menu. Admittedly, it was our interpretation of them, you know, a new, you know, slightly, you know, kind of what we believe to be tasty and also healthier version of that. And then gradually you just start to change the offer. And you know, we had some amazing peri chicken last week that we had, like, literally, you know, more than probably at least kind of 10-15 kids come up and say it's better than Nando's. So,
oh my goodness, that's praise indeed from a teenager. So I just want to ask, I'm really interested in this concept of banning packed lunches, which I find very exciting. So I just want to go to Nick, actually, to see if you allow packed lunches into the nursery.
We have no packed lunches in any of our nurseries.
Huzzah! There is one
provide
way.
All meals: breakfast, snack, lunch, tea, snack, and late snack as well. So that's across all 42 of our nurseries, and it's paid for majority by us because we're a social enterprise. Everything we earn goes back into our nurseries. And some of our nurseries, which are in very low demographic areas, we actually have food banks for parents as well.
And that is very good to hear. I've heard of schools telling their parents that they are a school lunch school, and if you want to bring a packed lunch, you have to have a good reason. But the outright ban is radical, and I love it. So moving right along, I have been asked in the chat, and it's probably a nice one to end on, whether, thinking about Nick and Jake and those working in schools, and George and Karen, have you seen schools adopt policies around this that they sort of sell to their parents, really? So food, nutrition, sustainability, well-being kind of policies where they say, this is what we do in our school. Have you gone down that route? Nick, you can start if you like.
Yes, we have a food and nutrition policy that goes to all parents when they sign up in their terms and conditions, so they're well aware of what we are all about. And we have a separate sustainability and greener environments policy as well.
Amazing. And what about Karen? Have you come across lots of schools that are writing this up in a policy and selling it out to their parents?
Yeah, we have, and I think I can talk. I'm actually a chair of governors at a primary school where I live, and we've just gone through the process of having a specific food policy for schools, which looks at everything from staff setting an example, so maybe getting away from the sort of staff having cake every Friday or bringing in fish and chips or something on a Friday into the staff room, right through to the school disco and what's acceptable to sell to children at the school disco. And I can say that it was really unpopular with parents, and the children were more in favour than the parents, I think. But that was it was before the pandemic, really, and it has settled down, and you know, nobody's really upset when they come to the school disco and they can't buy the packet of Haribos and they get fruit kebabs or something.
Good to hear. Well, look, I'm going to end on that note because I want to keep us to time. Everybody needs to go other places. So I'm just going to thank you, Karen, for that. It's good to end in a policy to take everybody along with us. Naomi, do you want to thank our speakers before we say bye-bye?
I certainly do. Thank you so much, everyone. That was really, really interesting. I feel like we took lots away from that, and it was brilliant to hear from Bea earlier. I know she was desperate to join the chat, but unfortunately wasn't able to get in on the link. But I think the really message is coming across really strongly, that really it is possible. It's definitely possible to do better. There were some really good practical ideas, but first and foremost, engage with the pupils and the young people, because they're the people who are going to help you make all of these changes. So thank you, everyone. That was really great. We'll make sure that we share all of the notes with you all afterwards.
Thanks, everybody.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.